Hey, Thomas here with another video for the Artisan Sound channel. Now, in this video I want to show something a little bit more in depth about the topic of mic checks and why we are setting the gain levels with a little bit of a different criteria normally when we do sound check for our musical theater productions than what you would normally do when you do, for example, a band recording or a band live show with a band where, let's say, the drummer has, whatever, 8 to 10 microphones on the drums, and then you have guitar inputs and vocal mics and bass inputs and maybe a keyboard input and so forth, and you have all these different levels coming in. So the purpose of how we're doing it in musical theater is usually we want to have all of the direct inputs from the microphones. I'm here on channels 1 through 16, and I've set up a scene, if you will, from a multi-track recording that I took from the direct input channels, from the direct input signals that the microphones are giving the console when you plug it in. So you can route this, and this is maybe time for a different video on how to set this up, but essentially what we've recorded is exactly the level as they come into the console. They're recorded like that into a multi-track recording device, into a digital audio workstation. And now I'm playing that back, and that means the playback is now giving me exactly the same levels as the mics were giving me when I recorded it. So that means I can now emulate different ways of processing the signal and setting the gain structure. And that's how I'm showing you, what I'm doing here and why I'm not doing it this way normally for our musical theater productions. So right here, what I've done is I've taken the signals, the channels that have some signals. So not all of the channels are used. You can see here, some of the faders are down. The rest of the channels have vocals, and it's just a recording from a song from the musical Brigadoon. And what I've done here is I've taken the approach that we're not normally taking, which is go through each channel and set the gain level so that it reaches the level that you would normally set here. So at an average, it goes up to, I don't know if you can read this well in the recording here, it goes up to about minus 18, minus 16, something like that. So the red is reached every now and then. This here is the individual channel that I'm soloing over here, which happens to be channel 1 at right now. So if I skip through here, this is channel 2, this is channel 3, channel 4. So you can see they're all, and they're singing different levels, right, at different times, but it's all kind of long notes without super dramatic dynamic differences. So it's a pretty good example to show what happens when you do it the normal way. I would call this like the band way as opposed to the musical theater way. So the band way is just set the gain structure of every incoming channel so that it reaches, it goes to like the first red every now and then. And you set this up for every channel to be like that. So now what you end up needing to do then in order to create a mix, let me take it off of solo. In order to create a mix here, you now have to bring down the channels according to how you want to actually blend the mix. So in theory, they're all coming in the same volume, but if you leave them all up all the way, you're going to have just a way loud mix that is going to, number one, it's going to overload your master bus, and number two, it's not going to sound good. So that means you're going to have to mix this, and this is a normal experience when you're doing a band mix, right? You're going to end up bringing the snares down, the kick down a certain way, the overheads are going to be way down compared to to the other ones. And so, in other words, you're creating a profile here with your faders where you bring your individual channel faders down and sometimes way down in order to create the balance that you actually want to accomplish, right? So this is the normal way. This is what happens when you do this, where you just set all the inputs to maximum level, but then you can't bring the faders up because otherwise everything would just overload the master bus, and you would have a mix that isn't manageable. So you have to bring the faders down if you set the gain structure in the input here to basically maximize so that you never reach a clip on the individual channel. So this is kind of the scenario, if you will. Now, usually what we do is kind of the opposite. We'd go, all right, I want to have all of these faders here up at 0, and I'm going to use the faders as fine-tuning devices for my mixing, because I'm getting 16 microphone channels in, and they're going to have dialogue scenes, and they're going to have singing and songs, and they're going to have different functions there. Sometimes in dialogue scenes, sometimes they're pretty well balanced or equally important because you want to hear every actor's line properly. So if even as a small character, if a small character has a line, you still need to boost that enough so that the line comes out and is understandable. There's no big difference between the principal actors and the actors who just have a few lines. You still want to have the actors who have a few lines just as loud as the other ones. But for example, in a song, you want to restructure that dramatically, and you want to have ensemble singers as a group way down compared to the principals who may be singing a solo in a song that goes back and forth between solo singing or duet singing or trio singing, so where multiple solos are involved, but then the ensemble as a whole is singing as well. So for that purpose, we're generally making it so that all of, let me actually bring up the sound here for a moment, and let's see if we can listen to this. So this way, this is a pretty balanced mix with the faders being all different, like they are like this. Now, they're also still going through groups here, through the DCA groups, and I have named the DCA groups a little bit according to vocal parts, so I can bring out, take out, no, we only have the female voices basically. Here's kind of an alto part that I can boost or take back. And I kind of just did it quick and dirty. I would do this more cleanly, right? So now here are the men. Right, these are the men, these are the ladies, and they're a little bit grouped here between lower parts and higher parts. Now watch what happens. I'm going to turn the main volume down a little bit, and we're going to just watch the faders here, the meters. What happens if I just push them all up? You can already hear there's distortion already in the speaker even. And so they're going way up now. So yeah, it's still within a range of levels because it's not terribly loud. That is manageable. But see here, you're getting some distortion already going because these are going up too high. So that means I would then need to bring these guys down. And that's kind of what I usually do, right? So this is compatible to what happens in my mix situation. But now I'm basically bringing them equally down, but I pushed these up unequally, right? I just pushed them to equal level, and they were at different levels before. So that means my if my goal is to have these faders all up and I want to do my mix on the DCA groups, and now I want to juggle my balances effectively here, I have to take a little bit of different approach to how I'm setting the gain input. Because my goal is on mic check, when I'm mic checking for musical theater, I'm balancing with the gain, with the input gain, I'm balancing it in such a way that all channels together sound like every individual actor has a compatible level in their dialogue. And so that means, in effect, I'm going to bring the gain structure down here because I'm aiming for a higher level of the faders as my general default. And that still affords me enough control to do small tweaks, but I won't need that much here. So if I do a good mic check where all inputs, microphone inputs, are tweaked so that they're coming in at a compatible level for dialogue scene when every actor is speaking with projection and like they will on stage, then I have all the faders here equal. And if I notice later that an actor hasn't given me their full volume in mic check, or someone is actually talking louder or quieter later, and I need to rebalance, a small move on an individual fader, like within this range, is usually enough to do the fine tuning, and then I still have everything on the DCA faders to control my final balance of the mix. And as you have seen in the other videos that I posted in the mix studies on the iPad, I'm basically reconfiguring the DCA groups all the time so that I have the principals here, the soloists for the song here, and some type of ensemble distribution and structure on the remaining faders. And that way I always have maximum control. And I can even then boost, if an individual soloist needs a strong boost, I can do that here. And there's no sonic disadvantage to giving them a little boost here or here, but I usually do it in the DCA fader because I have usually plenty of headroom left in the gain setting on the actual input setting. So I wanted to make this video just kind of to explain the difference of how I approach my gain structure for musical theater, where my goal is to have all faders zeroed out for the entire show, and I'm just using the faders for individual trims, and I'm doing all my mixing on the DCA groups. All right, I hope this helps someone. I think it's an interesting topic because it really illustrates a difference that normally doesn't come up. All the other videos about, well, basically any console, but also specifically the X32 and M32 consoles, they usually talking about setting the gain structure in the band style that just sets every channel so that you're maximizing the input on the gain fader here for that channel, and you don't pay any attention to what your fader setting would need to be for this gain setting to produce a proper mix of that material in the overall big picture. So I think this is an important kind of consideration to make a difference, where it's just more practical for musical theater in this way that I explained, and it's different when you're mixing a band or something that has more of a mix structure going here in the faders. All right, and then this is it. This is Thomas signing off for the Artisan Sound channel.